In last video sessions, we have understood the First Anglo-Maratha War, then Lord Wellesley's subsidiary alliance, Second Anglo-Maratha War, Third Anglo-Maratha War. Now let us understand the consolidation of British power in 1818 to 1857 and Anglo-Sikh War. Two Anglo-Sikh wars are fought. Let us understand that. Then Dalhousie and Doctrine of Lapse. The consolidation of British power 1818 to 1857. The British completed their agenda of ruling the entire India from 1818 to 1857. They occupied major states like Sindh, Oudh and many other smaller states. Dear students, the British had a cunningness as well as greed to rule the entire India. It was possible for them to rule from 1818 to 1857. The major states that they occupied are Sindh, Oudh and many other smaller states in India. Now the British, after fighting with the Marathas, they had to fight with the Sikhs to consolidate their power in India. Now let us understand the Anglo-Sikh Wars. The two Anglo-Sikh wars have been fought between the Sikh community and British. A political anarchy broke out in Punjab after the death of King Ranjit Singh in 1839. Anarchy means a state of lawlessness or disorder resulting from the failure of the government. It can be called as riot or misgovernment or disorder. Very soon after the death of King Ranjit Singh in 1839, in Punjab there started a political anarchy. The British attempted to invade Punjab, violating the Treaty of Friendship they had with the erstwhile king. In the December 1845, a war broke out between the British and Punjab. Sensing the danger from an outside force, Hindus, Sikhs and Muslims got together to defeat the British. After the death of Raja Ranjit Singh of Punjab, the British attempted to invade. They thought this as a chance and they tried to violate the Treaty of Friendship, and they invaded Punjab. So they had with the erstwhile means former or past, friendship which they had with King Raja Ranjit Singh. In December 1845, a war broke out between the British and Punjab. So they could not keep up the Treaty of Friendship with King Raja Ranjit Singh. The British declared a war against the Sikhs in Punjab. Sensing the danger, so all the Indians, they thought that this is a danger because an outsider has been forced the Indians to accept their terms and conditions and accept their supremacy. So these all Indians, they all together got together and formed an alliance with among themselves like Hindus, Sikhs and Muslims. They tried to defeat the British. The Indian kings realized that they had to be united to fight against an outsider, that is British. It was in 1845 a war broke out between the British and Punjab Sikh. Finally, they had to accept defeat due to the few traitor leaders. Traitor means someone who betrays his own country by committing treason. The Indians were forced to sign a humiliating Lahore Agreement in 1846. With the British resident became the de facto ruler of Punjab, means supreme ruler. Like this, Punjab became the independent state of East India Company. Here, all the combined forces who had been allied among themselves, they were completely defeated by the British. Not only that, they were forced to sign a humiliating Lahore Agreement in 1846. With this, the British resident became the de facto ruler of Punjab and Punjab came under the East India Company. This was the first independent state of East India Company. Again, the English were able to show their diplomacy and supremacy in the war against the Sikh. The Sikhs opposed the attempts by the British to rule Punjab directly. The opposition were led by Chattar Singh Atriwala in Lahore and Mulraj in Multan. Again, the people of Punjab were defeated. Finally, Lord Dalhousie merged the state of Punjab with the British Empire. So here students, the Sikhs opposed the attempt by the British to rule Punjab directly. So this was not tolerated by the English. The opposition were led by Chattar Singh Atriwala in Lahore. From Lahore, Chattar Singh Atriwala he formed an army, and Mulraj in Multan. Again, the people of Punjab were defeated, though the combined forces of Chattar Singh Atriwala in Lahore and Mulraj in Multan, the combined forces against the British were defeated. The Sikhs, who are known for patriotism and self-respect, they could not tolerate the British power in Punjab. Though there were differences among themselves, but they all together combined their forces under the guidance of Chattar Singh Atriwala in Lahore and Mulraj in Multan. Again, the people of Punjab were defeated by the British. Finally, they had to accept their defeat. So, Dalhousie merged the state of Punjab with the British Empire. So students, here we come to know that the first attempt of British was Marathas. All the three Anglo-Maratha war was successful. They showed their supremacy and expanded their empire. Now they moved towards the northwestern region, that is Punjab, and they also defeated the Sikhs there. After the death of King Ranjit Singh in 1839, the British were successfully defeated the Sikh and merged the Punjab as the independent state of East India Company. By the end of later part of 19th century, the English had completely washed out their opponents and established their supremacy in India. Might be the subsidiary alliance of Lord Wellesley or Dalhousie's Doctrine of Lapse. Students, for your benefit, though it has not been discussed in the text, it is not there in the text. For your own information, here the causes, course and results of First Anglo-Mysore War will be discussed. Do make use of this. So First Anglo-Mysore War, the year 1845 to 1846. What are the causes? Let us see the causes. First cause, it is political anarchy which broke out after the death of Raja Ranjit Singh. This was the first cause. Soon after the death of Raja Ranjit Singh, there was a political anarchy. Not only that, the British attempted to capture the Punjab. So as there was a friendship between Raja Ranjit Singh and the British, after the death of Raja Ranjit Singh, the British did not kept the promise, that friendship which they had with Raja Ranjit Singh. The British violated the treaty of friendship with the erstwhile king, that is Raja Ranjit Singh. So in December 1845, a war broke out between the British and Sikh in Punjab. Now let us see the events. Major development of the war, that is, this resulted to the First Anglo-Sikh War. Soon after the death of Raja Ranjit Singh, when the British attempted to capture, the Sikh could not tolerate. So they also declared war. So both the parties, that is British and Sikh, fought a war, that is First Anglo-Sikh War. Sensing the danger from an outsider, the Hindus, Sikh, Muslims fought together under the leadership of Maharaja Dalhousie Singh to defeat the British. All the Indian kings, that is Hindus, Sikh, Muslims, who fought against each other, united against a common enemy, that was British, that is also Sikh, under the leadership of Maharaja Dalhousie Singh to defeat the British. Finally, the combined forces of Sikhs were defeated by the British Governor General Lord Hardinge. Finally, in the First Anglo-Sikh War, the Sikhs were defeated against the British. What are the results? Let us see. Maharaja Dalhousie Singh surrendered and paid penalty of ₹1.5 crores to the British. Second point, the British imposed the subsidiary alliance over Punjab province. Thus, all the combined forces of Indian kings were defeated and they had to accept their defeat. Raja Dulip Singh, the last son of Ranjit Singh, had to pay the penalty of rupees 1.5 crores to the British, and he had to accept the subsidiary alliance over the Punjab province imposed by British. So students, this was the First Anglo-Sikh War causes, events and results. Students, let us see the Second Anglo-Sikh War 1848 to 1849. The Second Anglo-Sikh War occurred between 1848 to 1849. Let us see the causes. The interference of the British resident in the internal affairs of Punjab. Let us understand the meaning of British resident. British resident is a political agent who was an official of East India Company and was based in a princely state, okay, who was made to live in a princely state and who served as a part diplomat, part advisor to the native rulers and to part monitor of the activities in the princely states. So this British resident always tried to poke his nose in the internal affair of Punjab. So this was not tolerated by the Sikh. Next point, mutiny of Multan Subedar Mulraj. Mutiny is rebel, uprising, you can call it as, or revolt. An open rebellion against the proper authority, especially by the soldiers or sailors against their officers, or you can call it as refuse to obey the orders of a person in high authority. Subedar Mulraj of Multan disobeyed the order of British. He revolted against the British. This was also the second cause for the Anglo-Sikh War. Major events. In the battle, 6 armies were led by the Chattar Singh in Lahore and Mulraj in Multan. So these were the followers of Maharaja Dulip Singh. Again, third point, the Sikhs were defeated by the British. So this was another second defeat for the Sikhs in Punjab. Let us see the outcomes. What were the results? Sikhs were completely defeated by the British. Finally, Lord Dalhousie merged the state of Punjab with the British Empire. Next, Lord Dalhousie and Doctrine of Lapse. Lord Dalhousie, who arrived in India as the Governor General in 1848, made an attempt to integrate Indian princely states with the British Empire. He adopted Doctrine of Lapse policy, whereby the adopted children of Indian kings were refused of their right to throne. According to this policy, if any Indian ruler died childless, his adopted children had no legal right over the throne. Such state merged with the British Empire. Princely states like Satara, Nagpur, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Jhansi, Jaipur came under this policy. As the Governor General knew the conditions of these states, he used this policy as a political weapon. So students, here you have to remember that Dalhousie, who arrived in India as the Governor General in 1848, made an attempt to integrate Indian princely states with the British Empire. So he started annexing the princely states. He adopted Doctrine of Lapse policy, whereby the adopted children of Indian kings were refused of the right throne. Lord Dalhousie's policy was the king who doesn't have a male children was not supposed to adopt children, and even if they adopted the children, they don't have any right to ascend the throne. So what did Dalhousie's policy say? If any Indian ruler died childless or he adopted his children, okay, they don't have any right over the throne. So such states were merged with the British Empire. So those, okay, Indian rulers who die childless or who adopt children, they don't have any legal right over their father property or over their throne. So such states were merged into British Empire. The states which were merged with the British Empire. First was Satara in 1848, then Sambalpur in 1849, then Jaipur in 1849, then Nagpur in 1854, Udaipur in 1854, Jhansi in 1854. So these were some of the princely states which forced to accept the Doctrine of Lapse policy of Lord Dalhousie. So the Governor General knew that the conditions of these states, he was very well aware of these states, that they don't have any child issues nor they can adapt. So he used this policy as a political weapon. So this was another way of expanding the British Empire in India. As always, the luck favored the British. Many of the states king didn't have the issues at that time. That was a severe problem. Jhansi, okay, even in Karnataka, if you see Kittur, okay, they also faced the same problem. Kittur was annexed in 1824 by Doctrine Lapse. With the severe implementation of this policy, not only the princely families, even ordinary people who are sympathetic to these kings rebelled against the company. Their love for the kings and the sense of loyalty fueled this rebellion further. This finally resulted in the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857. Students, with the severe implementation, when Dalhousie started implementing the Doctrine of Lapse on the princely states, not only the princely families, that is not only the king families, even the ordinary people, the laymen also, who became sympathetic to these kings, rebelled against the company. We can see the example of Kittur, okay, where Sangoli Rayana and other people, okay, rebelled against the British government. Their love for their king and the sense of loyalty fueled this rebellion further. The kings loved their subjects. Subject means people here. They always loved the people and they showed, okay, kindness towards the people of their kingdom, and there was a loyalty between the king and the people. So when the kings were facing the problems, they didn't tolerate this. They rebelled against the British rule. So this rebellion finally resulted in Sepoy Mutiny of 1857. The cunningness and mercilessness of the Britishers showed towards the king for the expansion of the empire that was restricted till the kings. Now it came to be known for the common people also. Even ordinary people also revolted against the Britishers. They didn't tolerate this differences, and many of the kings who had lost their kingdom, they also rebelled against the British. So it was in 1857 that COPM mutiny broke out by Mangal Pandey. It is also recognized in the Indian history that as the first war of Indian independence. Students, you have to know some points here. The doctrine of lapse, okay, was introduced by the Court of Directors of East India Company. The princely states of Kittur was taken over by the East India Company in 1824 by imposing Doctrine of Lapse. This is the example. Lord Dalhousie, the Governor General of India in 1847, adopted this policy of Doctrine of Lapse. So prior to him, the Court of Directors of East India Company had introduced this. British Governor General Dalhousie is annexing the princely states, so it is generally associated with him. According to this policy, if any Indian ruler dies without children, their adopted children had no legal right over the throne, and such states get merged with the British Empire. By using this policy, Lord Dalhousie captured Satara in 1848. Later on, other princely states also like Sambalpur, Jhansi, Jaipur, Nagpur and Udaipur came under this policy. And students, don't have any confusion while writing your exam regarding the Wellesley's subsidiary alliance and Lord Dalhousie's Doctrine of Lapse. So for that reason, part 1 includes Lord Wellesley's subsidiary alliance, Anglo-Maratha Wars. Part 2 includes Anglo-Sikh Wars and Lord Dalhousie's Doctrine of Lapse. And students, here know this, Raja Ranjit Singh information has been given. Do read and understand. Wait students, you will be getting the question answers of this lesson with fill in the blanks.